everyone, and welcome again to the Philly Factor. I'm your host, Paul Perello. We are fortunate enough to have with us here a wonderful photographer who has spent many of his years at the Philadelphia Inquirer, award-winning photojournalist Ed Hille, who has received accolades from numerous local, state, and national, as well as international organizations. Most proud to have been nominated on more than one occasion for a Pulitzer Prize. Ed joins us to talk about his new book, In Plain Sight, Public Art in Philadelphia. And Ed, I want to welcome you to the program and thank you for spending some time with us here.
Thank you, Paul. It's nice to be here.
I want to talk about your book, In Plain Sight, because I like the title of the book and some wonderful photographs that you have included in your book. But I want to get to the root cause. What made you decide that you wanted to do this book?
I retired from the Inquirer after 33 years in 2017, in December of 2017. And I had been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease a year earlier. And I wanted to do something that not only highlighted art in the city, but would help the Parkinson's research cause. So I started out just doing a project on public art, and as it grew into the book form. And I decided that I would donate all the proceeds from the sales of the book to Parkinson's research.
I have to ask, how are you doing given your diagnosis? I know you're still active, and so, you know, in some respects, this book, while highlighting and showcasing, you know, public art in Philadelphia, it also is a message to other people who may be suffering from other illnesses, whether Parkinson's or cancer or Alzheimer's, whatever. But it gives hope and encouragement to other people who may think getting such a diagnosis means that they have to sort of curl up and retreat from everyday things.
Well, that was exactly what I didn't want to do. I didn't want to retreat. I wanted to be as active as I could, as long as I could. And this project was perfect for me. They say timing is everything, and I wanted to do it while I was still active and still able physically to get around and keep shooting the way that I like to shoot.
Sure. You know, in this digital age that we're in these days, a lot of people might ask, you know, and given your long career, I'm sure much of that must have been spent taking photographs of places, people, locations on film. Everything today is digital, but where did you utilize both digital and traditional film when you were either working in your final years at the Inquirer, or even some of the photos that you've included in the book? Were they based on film, you know, or were they digital photographs?
Well, that's interesting that you'd bring that up, because all the pictures in the book, with the exception of one, were taken after I retired, and they were all digital. I shot them all on a 2.25 digital camera, Fuji, and I shot them in black and white. I drew from my experience with film, but they were all digital.
So is you know, the tendency, I mean, because everybody's got a cell phone today, so they're out in a crowd, they put their cell phone in the air, they take a picture. Do you prefer digital as opposed to film? Is digital easier than film?
I'm trying to think how I want to answer this. When digital first came on the scene in the early 2000s, late 1990s and early 2000s, I was pretty much against it because the quality just wasn't there. And I identified with film for most of my career.
Sure.
But I found that as time went on, digital became not only as good, but in some cases better than the quality of the film that I was getting. And with the camera that I was using on this project, I found that the quality was exceptional. And I could get pictures. I could get pictures that I couldn't get before, and it worked out very well for me.
When you say you were able to get pictures with a digital camera as opposed to a film camera, was that because with film sometimes the lighting just has to be right in order to capture the subject that you're photographing, but with digital, especially now with some of the newer cameras that are out there, and even, dare I say, and I don't want to insult you, but even with our cell phones, we're able to take pictures with our cell phones, and the camera does everything. You don't have to worry about lighting, more or less.
Well, I don't know if that's quite true or not, but I think you always have to be concerned with lighting and the composition. And I find that the tonality and the range of tones in the digital is superior to when we had to push film, for instance, to get in to take pictures in low light situations. The quality is just superb now.
Mm.
Some people might say it's too good, but I find the quality is just perfect for me.
Okay. Um, and one of the other benefits is that you can instantaneously see the result of your work, whereas with film, you had to have that film processed. I had to have it developed before you could actually see if the picture was a success or not.
Well, in this case, also, um, I worked a lot of pictures as much as I could to get the result that I was looking for. I was trying to get pictures that where people and art intersected. And sometimes, I'll give you an example, the statue of Joan of Arc outside of the museum on the Parkway. She sits up so high that it was almost impossible to get people in the same picture until I saw that the tour buses basically drove right past the statue at her height. So I spent the $30 and took a ride around the city so I could get the perspective that I was looking for.
And you got to see the city while you were at it. That's a great story.
I got to
Absolutely.
sit down while I was doing it too.
Yeah, so because so often and discussing some of the the stories that you've covered over your illustrious career, you don't necessarily get to sit down. You gotta move, you gotta run, you gotta get to the location. It doesn't necessarily afford you an opportunity to rest. I mean, you were on the beaches of Normandy for the 49th anniversary of the D-Day landing. You covered the 1994 Winter Olympics in Norway. You also were out in West Philadelphia on Osage Avenue in what was a very dangerous situation, not only for the people that lived there, but also for the reporters who worked that scene. I mean, when you're going to some of these locations, when you were actively involved with working with the Inquirer, you want to get the shot, I'm sure, but you don't want to necessarily find yourself in harm's way. So, Ed, how did you balance the need to get the photo that you were looking for with the need to also stay safe?
I think it's a situation at times where you have to pick your battles or pick your pictures and decide how far out you're going to stick your neck.
Mm-hmm.
Osage Avenue was a good example. I mean, we were constantly scrambling, and there was a lot of activity going on. I was around the corner from the move house when the bomb was dropped, and it was a horrific scene.
I'll bet. I know, having worked in radio at that time in 1985, but I was in a studio. I wasn't necessarily on the front line like you and so many of your colleagues were on that day, May 13th, 1985. I'll never forget it. But you find yourself literally in the crosshairs of an event like that. You're there to do a job, but you also have to make sure that you're um, exercising the proper precautions, that you don't find yourself the story. Let's talk about some of the other things that you've done. Political conventions, Major League Baseball playoffs, the World Series, Grand Prix races in Monaco and Dallas, Texas. When you approach an assignment, Ed, and you're told, I want you to cover this, or I need you to cover that, how do you formulate in your mind, or how do you think of how you will approach that subject? I mean, you just don't go point and shoot, or maybe you do just point and shoot and hope you catch something. But how do you approach a subject?
Well, I'm going to back up for a minute, because this is a question that I've asked myself, or I've questioned myself on a lot in my later career. It's when you take for granted that something is happening and that it'll happen again and you can pass it up. It's a big mistake. And unfortunately, I've had my share of mistakes where I assumed something would happen again and missed the picture.
Mm.
Anticipation has a lot to do with how we approach our pictures and approach our assignments. I started out as a sports photographer, and I learned from the great John Philo, to anticipate not only what's going to happen, but what happens after the action is over. And so we're constantly looking for, the great picture, and you have to realize that it can happen at any time.
Mm. Wow, that's an important lesson, and I guess you sometimes, I hate to say it's trial and error when you're taking a photograph, but there's an element of surprise. I mean, you can be sent out, and if the event is like a parade, you sort of know what to expect with a parade, but there's always that element of surprise that something could occur during that event that you don't anticipate. You got to be ready. Point that camera, be ready to take that picture at a split second. And that's why some of your work is so remarkable in looking at these photos that you've put into the book, as well as some of your work from all of the years that they've been published in the Inquirer. You mentioned some of the we'll get into the book a little bit here, but you mentioned some of those events that perhaps just being at the wrong place at the wrong time, or pushing the shutter on the camera a split second too late, or a split second too soon. Is there an event that comes to the top of your mind, Ed, that you say, yeah, that's the one that got away? I'm sure there have been a few of them like that.
Well, there's one that did get away, and when I was a very young photographer, and I had an incredible experience, an incredible opportunity, I would say, in that I got sent to Afghanistan on a freelance job in 1982 when the Russians were fighting the Afghans, and I was with Peter Arnett, who was with CNN at the time, and we were with the Mujahideen and walked into Afghanistan from Pakistan. And it seems to me it took a couple days to get in. And when we got to our mountain hideout, somebody came running over and said there's a Russian tank on the road to Jalalabad. And at that time, I was just so tired that I thought, well, if it happened like that just now, after we just got in, it's going to happen again. And I was too slow to get there and missed the picture.
So that's a life lesson that you carry with you for the rest of your career, because you don't want to necessarily repeat that problem or that event from happening again.
Well, it can happen on any assignment, but the key is not to get um, I don't want to say lazy, but not to assume that something is going to take place. If something is happening in front of you, you should always try to get to it.
Yeah. Um, when did you start working on the book In Plain Sight, Public Art in Philadelphia?
As soon as I retired, I wanted to make sure that all the images in the book were mine, and they were all fresh.
Hmm.
So I retired in December 29th of 2017, and I started to work right away on it.
And so, are some of the images, did you go back to places that perhaps you had seen or visited before, or was this a whole new journey to find new places, new pictures, new photos to include in the book?
A little of both. I mean, I had spent 33 years on the street, looking for images for the paper. And so I was familiar with some of the um, art that existed in plain sight right in front of us. But there was also there's always new art being created. There are over 3,000 murals in the city. There's countless sculptures and um, different artworks that are popping up all the time. Um, the statue that was outside the back of the art museum, I photographed with after shooting Diana inside. And again, that's one of those things where I'm glad I shot it when I did, because it turns out that that statue was removed and put over in Penn, the Penn campus. So it wasn't there for much longer.
Sure. Um, I think it's safe to say that, we Philadelphians, and it's not just a Philadelphia thing, but, you go outside and you may walk past this great artwork that's been there for years, decades, um, uh, and just never notice it. It's just there. It's part of our landscape. It's part of our commute to work or school. And then all of a sudden it shows up in a book like yours, Ed, and you page through it and you see it and you go, oh gosh, yeah, I never realized that is on my trip to school every morning. Sometimes it takes a book like yours to sort of open our eyes to what is art, and sometimes it's staring us right in the face.
Well, you can't imagine how many times it's happened to me now that people have said, I've never seen that before. And it's something that they walk past every day, or, occasionally. It's the whole idea of the behind the book was this intersection of art and people, and how people relate to the public art around them.
Yeah. How many images have you included in the book?
There are over 70, I believe.
And yet there are, if there are 70, there are probably 700 pieces of art that are in our city and the surrounding area. How was it for you to sort of cull through all these images and come up with the 70 to include in the book?
Actually, it wasn't hard at all. I mean, when I got a good picture, it just knocked me over, and I automatically knew that I included in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Two examples were of the girl in front on the cover of the book, the girl that's having her music video made at the Navy Yard, with the sea monsters coming out of the building behind her and the plane flying overhead. Um, it just grabbed me,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a coincidence that I happened to be there just scouting out the location and found her there. The same thing goes for the picture of the girl and her father walking past the photo fence across the street from the Kimmel Center. It's just a moment in time, and I was fortunate enough to grab that.
Mm. What do you hope that people take away from your book, Ed, In Plain Sight, Public Art in Philadelphia? What do you hope people, when they see the book, they open it, they dive into it, what do you hope they take away from it?
It's what you see when you look. When you stop to look around, there are images and things happening all the time, but so many people are consumed with, the moment that they're in, that they never see those images.
The book is available right now, and I encourage people, if you have a love of art, you have a love of the city, you have a love of photography, this is a book that you definitely want to pick up. And again, all the proceeds will benefit Parkinson's research. We should mention that every day people may find themselves just strolling through the neighborhood, and they may come across a spot and they may just snap a random picture, and you may just think, oh, well, it's a cute picture of a cat in the middle of the street, or it's a cute picture of cats in windows or whatever. But you yourself might be actually engaging in this form of art. And given your vast experience, what would you recommend to people who they may just have like a fleeting interest in photography, but they may think of themselves as, an amateur photojournalist with their cell phone? I mean, what type of advice could you give people who are interested in photography?
Take your cell phone out and take more pictures. I think a lot of people are critical of the iPhones and cell phones that take that kind of picture. But on one hand, it's killing the professional photography uh, career. On the other hand, it's a realization of George Eastman's dream of having everybody be a photographer. I mean, the quality of images is incredible, and I find myself out taking pictures of flowers and trees and things with my cell phone sometimes, and leaving the big cameras behind.
Hmm.
Photography is there for you to enjoy.
Sure. Photography has changed over all the years, and we discussed that earlier. But what made you, Ed, decide that this is what you wanted to get into? I mean, was it a childhood hobby that then turned into a professional career? What made you decide to become a photojournalist?
It was quite by accident, and I grew up in a little town in North Jersey, and my best friend was an amateur photographer, and I would go into his basement, and he would develop pictures over his mother's uh, washer, and I was amazed at the pictures raising out of the trays, and it's just kind of magical. And I went to school. I studied history. I didn't have any degree. I don't have a degree in journalism or any classes or formal education in photography. I just picked it up on my own. I was blessed to have people around me that um, were professionals and would give me advice and occasionally throw me a brick of film. I just fell into it, and it was. I like to say it saved my life because I didn't have to work in a factory or do mundane kind of work. I got to take pictures for a living and get paid for it.
And you really got to travel to some far off places, some nice and some not so nice.
I got to travel around the world and somebody else paid for it.
One final question before I let you go is that, even though you're retired, but you're still actively involved in taking photographs, do you miss I'll use the term grind of the job, working for a newspaper and going and looking for that photograph that you need to get? Do you miss that? Or a lot of people that retire say, I don't miss the job, I miss the people.
Well, I'm fortunate again that I retired with I was in the industry at the perfect time. I was working for newspapers that were competing with other newspapers, and I was given tremendous opportunities, which hopefully I embraced and learned something from. I don't miss getting up and going to work every day. I do miss the people, and I miss the opportunities
Sure.
because I'll just make it really quick. But I found that working as a photographer gave me a license to be to stick my face into somebody else's life and to record their life from their perspective. And when I retired, I found that I didn't have that license anymore.
Hmm.
And it's that's what I miss the most.
Well, well, I want to continue to wish you well. I want to wish you all the success with your book, In Plain Sight, Public Art in Philadelphia. Ed Hille, thanks so much for being with us on the program. I do appreciate your time, and stay well, my friend.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Until the next time, ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul Perello. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Philly Factor.